Welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabrielle Nicolay, and today I'm joined by Whitney Ortiz. Whitney, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm delighted for you to be here to talk to us about Eliana's light and other things as well. And so do you want to just start by sort of introducing yourself and how Eliana's light came to be and what it is, and give us an intro?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. And I will just start by sharing that I'm first and foremost a mom of two amazing, wonderful daughters, Amelia and Eliana, and the wife of my wonderful husband, Orlando. And we founded Eliana's Light in loving memory of Ellie, who passed away at 3.5 from a complex medical condition, primarily from her heart. And we really wanted to continue with her in a special way to support other families that are walking a path that we walked in a similar light. So Eliana's Light supports the whole health, well-being, and quality of life of Maryland, DC, and Virginia families that include children who have medical complexities. And these are those who often are in long and unexpected hospitalizations, have very, very serious and life-limiting illnesses. They see multiple specialists, often experience a lot of medical and other kinds of trauma. And they, within their whole of their family, have a lot of mind, body, and spiritual needs that we had as well. And that we wanted to do something together with others in the community to fill some of the holes that we really saw existing within our medical and social services systems. So I
love
can
this.
go more depth, but
that's
really why and how we started.
I love it. So the minute you say holistic, I get goosebumps because I'm like, yes. But tell us specifically some of the areas where you saw need. So child has a complex medical issue, sometimes from a genetic syndrome, sometimes from a physical condition that's occurring. And, you know, some of the time anyway, hopefully most of the time, they go to children's hospitals, they get care that's directed at their physical symptoms. But what else are we talking about?
Exactly, where we want to look beyond the symptoms. And we support a whole health approach to care in recognition that we are more than just our physical beings. We have emotional needs, health needs, we have spiritual health needs, we have social health needs, financial health needs, and some even say intellectual health needs. And when in a moment you are in crisis, it becomes so apparent how much all of this really comes together and how much it all needs to be addressed. And in our more traditional Western way of doing medicine, there is oftentimes a lot of gaps that we and others had seen in the type of care that is traditionally given. And thus we wanted to find others within our systems here who also were looking for ways to better support a child who was either in the hospital or able to be at home, had a complex medical condition, and looking at the whole of who they are, and also the family, because each individual within that family is experiencing their own life and have their own physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, social, intellectual, etc. health needs. And when one member of that family has a complex medical condition, everyone is affected. And so we look at that patient-centered care, the family-focused care, and also that family being in a community, having to really recognize that what kind of access does that family have to good quality medical care, solid, nourishing food, and other kinds of supports that really support that whole family.
So you mentioned food. So let's stay there for a second. What are the ways in which, give us an example if you can, about like, and if it's not food, pick something else, but give us a specific example for like how this works. Like I can hear listeners maybe saying, okay, well, like you're getting your medical care, like, everybody else has to make do.
Mhm.
And then I can hear other people in my head, there are a lot of conversations saying, okay, yeah, that sounds nice, but what is it specifically? Give me a specific.
Mhm.
And maybe it's your story and maybe it's somebody else's that you're going to anonymize. But how does it work?
Yeah, so it is a very delicate topic in understanding that the access people have to food, there is a lot of diversity within that, right?
Mhm.
And also the education, the awareness of what is going to really be nourishing to oneself and to help oneself heal, get better, feel well, and experience well-being. And one of the gaps that we had been seeing within our nation's medical care system is the education even that the care providers receive from medical school and onwards as to the key role that nutrition plays and what exactly are those nutrients that each child needs for their particular condition. How can nutrition really support one to be able to thrive beyond survive? And so when at a hospital, if a child is going through a treatment plan and is there because of a complex medical condition or for anything else, and white bread and jelly are what is observed to be given to this child repeatedly, and nothing is really taking place to inform or to provide better options within that care environment, then it is to the detriment of that child and to the whole of the progression of that child moving forth. And
So,
there's a
and
lot
that's,
needed
sorry to
there.
interrupt, but you're talking about hospital provided food, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then what is also not only what's available, but also what is encouraged, what kind of information is given, and the way that information is given so that it is received from those who are caring for that child, whether it's the child's caregivers directly, parents, guardians, etc., and or the care providers, those who are spending a lot of time with the child. And it's not easy, believe me. I know from having been at a child's bedside of my own child and trying to feed food when my child had just come out of a surgery or after any kind of procedure, and we just want to comfort. It is one of the worst things ever to see your child suffering, and you just want to give something that will be, help that child grow and fill a belly. And so I get it that not eating broccoli, is going to be much easier and having that white piece of bread. And at the same time, like, how can we all do better at supporting the whole of a family and thus the child as well to be able to be nourished and thus to thrive? So nutrition being key and coming through the care providers, received and taken forward with the caregivers and all in partnership, and how to thus, depending on the age and the cognitive capacity, et cetera, of the patient, how can that patient be a key partner in one's own healing and understanding and moving forward? It's very complex.
It's very complex what you're saying. Exactly. And there's part of the
Not
reason
easy.
no, it's not easy. I mean, it's simple, but it's not easy, first of all. And part of the reason this podcast is called Complicated Kids Podcast is because it is complex and there aren't any sort of particularly in this case, but in many cases, there's not a recipe. There is no cookbook. There is only what you see. And you have a really nice diagram on your website about kind of who's involved and where and keeping the patient in the center. And but all of these things are kind of swirling around. And so speak a little bit to this complexity. Like, how do we take something that is very multifactorial and complicated and enact some things that make sense given either the direction that we want to go in generally or like, sort of more immediate needs.
In light of this big vision, mission, and how there are so many out there working and often feeling in isolation on this point, where we can find different ways to connect. And to take a health analogy, we're really binding all that connective tissue and finding the bright lights out there who are champions in this space, those integrative medicine physicians and nurses, those amazing speech and language therapists who take this holistic approach and really get it when they visit a family in their home or in the hospital. And also those who are like acupuncturists, those who are massage therapists, social workers who get the whole of that picture, and the case managers. It really takes a team and integrated approach. And those who are really recognizing that the time has come, long overdue, to work on shifting the system and to really filling in these gaps, and how to connect those throughout a community like a web, like all this connective tissue that can improve the whole health and the well-being of a community as a whole,
Yeah.
recognizing that these institutions are operating to help others feel better. And so we work in partnership with medical institutions, and we also work directly with the families through our unique care model, which I can get into.
Mhm.
So providing the support directly to the family is the C in our care. And we can thus do what we can together in collaboration with others to support the whole of a family wherever they are, whether they're at home or they're in a hospital. And then A in care is advocate. In the role that we play and the many hats that we wear as parents or as members of a community through our practitioner lenses and otherwise, we can advocate for these whole health approaches to care within our medical systems to make a difference in however we can and provide a voice out there to other families who are trying to get this kind of support that right now insurance isn't fully covering either. And so making the case to the insurance companies that this really matters. And then that R is reach and raise awareness. So this conversation helps in that effort. And I thank you so much for that, is reaching others out there, hearing from them, listening, and really helping together to make a difference, raising awareness on the importance of this and how people are searching for solutions beyond what our traditional medical system is able to provide.
Mhm.
And then the E is exchange. Exchange ideas, exchange resources, exchange information. We're not one organization can hold all the answers and can have all the capacity, in and of itself to make a difference. So we are one, of many out there, and with you and others, I truly believe there is a shift happening, and I'm so grateful that it is. And we are trying to do everything we can to help.
Mhm. One of the things that we talk a lot about on this podcast is sleep. Um, and it strikes me, having just sort of assisted a family member through a medical procedure, and having observed families go through medical procedures, one of the things that it's really hard to do in a hospital is sleep. One of the things it's really hard to do, if you're a patient, one of the things it's really hard to do if you're a caregiver of a child or a person who is having medical things happening, is get good rest. How do you navigate, or what are some things that you have in place for getting, let's talk about caregivers, because getting caregivers some respite and some rest, like actual rest.
Sure. Yes, definitely. I hear you. Having very hard and uncomfortable chair as many hours as possible, which for many years was only 2 hours at a time. If anything more than that, it would be amazing and wonderful. And with the constant wake ups from beeps and all that. So I definitely hear you on that and what it can do and how important recuperative sleep is for healing. And so if just talking about the caregivers for a moment who are spending lots of time at a bedside, I talk a lot with them about what are some concrete, easy, and free or very low cost things that could really make a difference for you. Because a lot of this is really the personalized approach to care, right? Because everybody's different, and what works for one, and that goes for all of healthcare, right, does not necessarily work for another. And so I can share some general things that have proven to be helpful to many, and to see if any of these might resonate with any of those who are listening today.
Yes, please.
Thinking through how fast we're moving. Because if you're like I am, typically run really fast and I have a million things on the go and a million things running through my mind. And so so the energy is at that level. But when I know that it is coming time to approach sleep, and if I am at a hospital bedside and things are pretty much on a schedule, then I do know in advance when I should be starting to really slow my own self down and really checking in on myself and the tone that I have within my voice, the pace that I'm moving my body physically and talking. How fast am I talking? The obviously volume of my voice. And so my presence and that whole of who I am really does matter to the aura that I'm bringing into the space that I'm sharing with the other person, so I can help that other person get to sleep and helping my own self. So that, and just like setting the tone is something.
I'm going to press pause on you for just a second because I want the listeners to notice what happened in that whatever 30 seconds to 1 minute that you were describing, how to set your nervous system to a lower volume. I want them to notice that you did the things while you were talking about the things, and that actually created a whole shift just in the energy of the way in which we were talking. Right. So now my nervous system is leveraged in service of that. And I'm going to maybe amp it up a little bit up from here just because that's how I run and because we're in a meeting. But it is a testament, and this is why I want to get a little bit meta about it here, to how powerful our own management of our minds and bodies are in the service of our children. We talk a lot about co-regulation. And in this case, how do we co-regulate in service of good rest? And so I just wanted to point that out. I hope you have another strategy for us.
Yeah, no, thank you. So as we're talking about that, co-regulation and self-management, what are some techniques that you can do, even just kind of playing with yourself in a way of saying, okay, when I put my hand to my heart, I am tuning into myself. This is a direct care to self, touch-based way that I can say, time to settle down, time to calm down. Let me connect to my breath. And then if I need a breathing technique in this moment, what are the breathing techniques that help me to start relaxing, to really slow down my nervous system? And I can do this in a split second now because of practice. And that's why it's called a practice. So if taking myself back to a hospital room, I would be thus connecting to myself. What kind of breathing matters to me in this moment that will help? And if I'm already stressed and I need to take something more physical to get going into a more relaxed state, I would do a, like, breathe it out, like get it out. That kind of active way of breathing.
Yeah, and the audio is not doing us any favors, but for the listeners, it's a sharp inhalation and then a double exhale through your mouth. So in through your nose sharply and then exhale through your mouth twice. Which, yeah, I mean, and this is what's interesting about these techniques is these are neuroscientifically valid things.
Right.
And I think people want to, sometimes some people want to make it seem like, you know, oh yeah, connect to your breath. That's such a woo-woo thing to do. It is and it isn't.
Right. There is science now that backs up what has long been practiced in various traditions around the world. And so we can now say with this kind of scientific research that, yes, it does really help. And the vagus nerve, which we could go into a lot, which I never learned growing up. And now after all of this and various courses that I've taken, I'm so glad I know how much we can really help ourselves in moments. And the breathing is one way. And of course, there are many techniques on that. And so sometimes for me, it's that physical, very strong inhale, strong exhale. And other times it's a shorter inhale with a longer exhale. And it's just that really tuning into who you are, what you need in that moment.
One of the things that you mentioned before we hit record was that Eliana had been a source of joy for you, and that might surprise people. Do you want to talk a little bit about Joy and complicated kids?
Oh, yes. She knew in a way that I can never fully explain, like how to live in a moment, how to really appreciate a moment. I mean, she would have these belly laughs that just like got everybody smiling. And she was just a jokester, no matter what she had gone through. Yeah, she was just so funny, and just so full of life and really did like live life to the fullest in every way that she knew how she could
Yeah.
from the ages of 0 to 3.5 when
Yeah.
she transitioned. And so I am just always thinking of that. And that reminder comes to me often,
Yeah.
and I need it. And just what a wonderful teacher she always has been and will be for me.
I'm tearing up because I had a client like this years ago. He had a very complex genetic, whatever, spontaneous gene transmutation that led to some physical deformities, a propensity to cancer. He had a G tube, like just he was small in stature. This child, he looked like a little old man, but when he smiled, you had the feeling that you were being blessed by him or by whatever. And it was so amazing to work with his family and with him, and to really modify sort of the goals based on sort of what his needs were and where he was going. And not to have much regard because his life expectancy was pretty short. It kind of forced me to stay in the here and now and not look too far ahead. Well, what is he going to use for communication when he's 26? Well, we're not talking about 26. Maybe we're talking about 11. And there's a kind of freedom there. And I know it sounds very maybe strange to say, but this child, in the midst of his pain, his discomfort, in the midst of everything, could just light up a room. And he was everybody's favorite. And he's been gone almost as long as Eliana now, and continues to live. Sorry, you got me going there.
Beautiful. And I'm so glad to know of him now and how his message, continues to light up your path and now mine. And thus his light is shining so brightly. That's beautiful.
It's a complicated thing to hold both of those notions. That's something that is so hard and so heavy, can also be a source of light and joy. So this is going to sound like maybe a weird question, but I know that is the message that underlies sort of all of the work that you do with Eliana's light. Is there a formal way that you bring that to families? How are you meeting people where they are? How does that, how do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. We wanted to have easy ways for families to reach us, those who need support in any of the ways that we can provide. So we have an application on our website, and care providers can go to the website, send the link to a family. We also have brochures that we provide at medical centers that support children who have medical complexities, and specifically reach out to care providers like the social workers and the case managers and the nurses who are working very directly with families and have that picture more of the whole of the family and of the child. And we don't have financials as a, no kind of minimum that you need to make to be able to access support, because we get it that even if they're making whatever amount of money, the stress and the overwhelm, the anxiety and the pressures, they might need somebody there who can support them with stress relief. And so it depends on the family. And again, we take a very personalized approach. So if a family does need financial support to even just help put some food on the table for that week, then we can provide a check They don't need to provide any kind of receipts. We have a phone call, we get to know the caregiver, we listen compassionately, and we come from a space where there's no evaluation, there is no power dynamic. We tell them right off the bat, this is not any kind of conversation that would make you, in a sense of being evaluated.
Mhm.
This is from caring parents to caring parents.
Mhm.
And thus the onion starts to unfold, and we learn about other needs that they may have, like housing instability, or there's a mental health need that one of the siblings has. And so beyond that check, to help support some basic needs from just keeping the lights on, or food, as I mentioned, or getting to appointments, gas, parking, all those things that like insurance doesn't often cover. Then we also can provide a personalized care package of comforts to the patient and any of the members of the family that can help with processing emotions, like arts and crafts supplies, that can be like comforts, especially for, say, caregivers who are sleeping at a hospital bedside, like aromatherapy, heat wraps, warm socks, earplugs, eye masks, some of those other tools we were talking about that can help with sleep. We can have a voice recorder for children who are like babies who are going to be for long periods of time without their parent next to them, and their parent can record their voice or a song or any kind of comforting rhythm and then have it at the baby's bedside. We can incorporate all these things into a personalized care package based on what that family would find helpful and comforting. And then we also connect to other resources. So if a family member is having, for example, needs in the mental health arena, then helping that caregiver get to the right kind of resources in our community. Or just last week, getting an application from a family that includes a teenager who is experiencing cancer right now. And she had found that after her recent surgery, the one thing that really made a difference to her and feeling a little bit better was acupressure. And on our advisory board, there is an amazing acupressure and acupuncturist, Dr. Reese of Healthy Littles. And in collaboration with her, we're able to give 7 sessions at home to this child so that she is able to feel a little bit better at home. And that was what was going to make the difference for them. Right. And so this connecting, or to housing specialists, or to regular home delivery of food, because a county government does that for families who cannot leave for various reasons and there's a medical need.
Yeah.
So we look for different ways to support the whole of a family. And they can do that just through a website application or texting me. And if they speak a language other than English as their primary language, we can also provide support. Like I can speak in Spanish or Portuguese. And if it's a language other than those 3, then our wonderful volunteers come in and they will be the direct support with that family through us to help make sure that language is not a barrier.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Give us the information. If people want to find you, how do they do that?
Sure. Our website is www.elianaslight.org. And right there on the site, you'll find that there are things on the menu like get support. Under there is apply for support, which brings you directly to our application. And then there is another link called resources. And this is a consolidation of various resources that we've pulled together over the years to help save time for these caregivers who have negative time available. And so it's organized into different categories and by states. And we also recommend a wonderful search engine that we're partners with called findhelp.org, where others can search for resources that are also very well categorized and easy to search through. So right there on our website, www.elianaslight.org. And if they want to email me, my email address is whitney@elianaslight.org.
We will have links to all of that in the show notes. And I have 100 more questions, and we're going to leave it there for now.
Thank you.
But Whitney, thank you so much for coming today. This was a treat.
Thank you so much for having me. And I really am happy to talk with anyone out there. We also always welcome input, ideas, suggestions, how we can best serve families within our community that include children who have complex medical conditions and or come and volunteer with us and be a part of our efforts. So thank you so much, Gabrielle. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you.